Hello, I am Ryan.
Hello, I am Amy. Welcome to Listen to English Podcast.
So let's dive right into this idea of building what we're calling your English brain.
Okay.
What exactly does that mean to you?
Well, it's a great question to start with.
Yeah.
It really gets to the heart of, what separates someone who simply knows English
Right.
from someone who truly embodies the language,
Yes. Yeah.
So when we talk about building an English brain,
Mm-hmm.
we're describing the process of training your mind to conceptualize,
Okay.
to process information,
Yeah.
and to formulate thoughts directly in English
Okay.
without having to translate from your first language.
Oh, I see.
So it's like bypassing the need for that mental go-between, allowing you to engage with English in a much more immediate and intuitive way.
Yeah.
It's not just about vocabulary or grammar rules. It's about rewiring your cognitive pathways so that English becomes your default mode of thinking.
Gotcha.
When you're using the language, whether you're speaking, listening, reading, or even just thinking to yourself.
That makes so much sense because I remember when I was learning Spanish, every time I wanted to say something,
Yeah.
there was this voice in my head that would say it in English first.
Right.
And then I'd have to scramble to find the Spanish words. It was so clunky and slow.
Yeah.
Like trying to run through mud or something.
I know exactly what you mean.
It really impacted my confidence and my ability to just keep up in conversations.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is that developing this English brain
Yes.
is about getting rid of that extra step,
Exactly.
making the whole process just smoother,
Yeah. Much smoother and much more efficient.
more efficient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your experience is a perfect example of the challenge.
Mm-hmm.
That constant internal translation acts as a huge bottleneck.
Yeah,
It just eats up your mental energy and slows down your response time.
exactly.
And it prevents you from fully immersing yourself in the flow of the language.
Yes.
All of the studies show that this reliance on translation,
Okay.
while it's totally understandable in the early stages,
Yeah,
ultimately hinders the development of fluency and spontaneity.
right.
So by cultivating the ability to think directly in English, you're freeing up those cognitive resources,
Right.
allowing you to really focus on the nuances of communication, the
Right.
natural rhythm of the language,
Yeah.
and expressing your thoughts more authentically and without hesitation.
So it's about making English not just a tool that you use,
Yes.
but a genuine part of how you process the world.
Yeah, part of who you are.
Okay, so the big question then is how do we actually start building this English brain?
Right.
It sounds like such a monumental task,
It can seem that way.
like trying to reprogram our fundamental way of thinking.
Right.
But, it appears that there are actually 5 specific methods that we can use. So where should we begin with these practical techniques?
Well, let's start with something really simple,
Okay,
but super effective in shifting your mental framework towards English.
okay.
And that's consciously and actively naming the objects and the environment around you in English.
Okay, so when you say naming, what do you actually mean?
Okay, so I don't just mean passively recognizing the English word when you see it or hear it. I mean making a deliberate effort to identify each item you encounter.
Right.
And mentally label it in English, even if you already know the word in your native language.
So this practice seems pretty small on its own,
Yeah.
but how does that help?
Well, it begins to forge those direct neural connections between the object itself and its English equivalent.
I see.
It weakens that reliance on the translation step.
Okay, I got it. So imagine I'm sitting in my living room right now listening to us.
Okay.
What would this exercise actually look like in that context?
Okay, well, just take a moment and scan your surroundings.
Okay.
And maybe your eyes land on the sofa where you're sitting.
Right.
Make a conscious mental note. This is a sofa.
Gotcha.
Then maybe you see a table in front of you.
Okay.
Again, this is a table.
Okay.
And look around further.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's a lamp, a book, a window.
Yeah.
And for each of these items, just actively engage with its English name in your mind.
So it's not just recognition.
No.
It's about actively producing the English label.
Yes. This act of naming builds a direct pathway in your brain
Uh-huh.
between the object and the English word.
So we're bypassing the native language route.
Exactly.
It's like we're creating a new mental address for these everyday things
I like that.
directly in English.
Yeah.
So how can we extend this practice beyond our homes?
Well, as you move through your day, just try to maintain this awareness and keep practicing.
Mm.
When you step outside, consciously identify the trees lining the street, the cars driving by the buildings, the sky, the sun, the clouds.
Wow.
If you're at the grocery store, mentally label the apples bananas milk bread.
So many things.
I know, right?
Wow.
It's about making it an ongoing practice
Right.
that you do all day long.
Like a meditative practice.
Exactly.
Accompanying you everywhere.
Yes.
So every time I encounter something new or familiar, make that connection
Make that connection.
with his English name.
Yes,
This helps solidify my English vocabulary
it does.
in a context-rich way.
Yeah, in a way that makes it much more readily accessible
Right.
when you need to think or speak.
So it's like we're relearning the names of everything but this time in English.
Exactly.
How important is consistency with this method?
Well, it's absolutely fundamental.
Yeah.
Think of it like building a muscle.
Okay.
You wouldn't expect to see any growth if you only worked out once in a while. It's the same with language learning.
Makes sense.
Even short, focused periods of this activity
Yeah.
can be more beneficial than one long, infrequent session.
Interesting.
The more regularly you prompt your brain to recall and use those English labels,
Right.
the more automatic this process becomes.
What aspects of this method do you think would be particularly beneficial for learners at different stages of their English language journey?
Well, I think it's accessible for everyone,
Yeah.
regardless of their proficiency level.
Yeah.
So a complete beginner can start by focusing on really basic vocabulary, like door, floor, chair.
Yeah.
While more advanced learners can challenge themselves by naming more complex or less frequently encountered objects.
Yeah. I could see that.
It's also a very low-pressure way to practice.
That's true.
because it's all internal. There's
Yeah.
no fear of making mistakes in front of others.
It feels like a really gentle yet powerful way to start building that foundational layer of English thinking.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's private.
Yeah.
It's personalized,
Uh-huh.
and it adapts to your current vocabulary level and learning pace.
Right. And the lack of pressure lets me just focus on building that connection between the object and the English word.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It helps to bypass all that analytical, rule-based processing that dominates early language learning.
Right.
And it taps into a more intuitive, vocabulary-driven approach to thinking in English.
Awesome. So that's method number one.
Uh-huh.
Consciously naming things around you in English consistently throughout your day,
Yes.
wherever you are.
Wherever you are.
What's the next strategy we can use to develop this English brain?
Okay, so the second really effective method is speaking to yourself in English.
Talking to myself.
In English. Yeah, it might sound a little unconventional,
Yeah, a little bit.
but trust me, it's an incredibly powerful technique
Okay.
for building fluency, internalizing sentence structures,
Uh,
and reinforcing those direct thought to English pathways we've been talking about,
Uh,
all without the anxiety of speaking with others.
yeah. Oh, that's a good point.
This private space allows you to experiment,
Mhm.
make mistakes freely,
Right.
build confidence.
Yeah.
Even if no one else is listening.
Sometimes the pressure of having a conversation with a native speaker can really shut down my ability to even access the English that I know.
I know exactly what you mean.
So taking that pressure away
Yeah,
feels like it would create a much more relaxed environment for practice.
it does.
So what are some specific examples of how someone might go about speaking to themselves in English?
Well, the key here is to consciously use English to narrate your actions,
Okay.
describe your surroundings,
Right.
articulate your thoughts and feelings, or even plan your day
Oh,
as you go about your routine.
Okay.
So, for example, if you're in the kitchen making dinner, try verbalizing each step in English.
Okay.
You might say to yourself,
Mhm.
okay, now I am opening the refrigerator to take out the eggs and milk.
Okay.
Next, I will get a pan from the cupboard and place it on the stove. Now, I am cracking the eggs into the bowl
Mm-hmm.
and whisking them together with a little bit of salt and pepper.
So it's about describing these everyday actions in English
Yeah.
and linking the physical movements to the English vocabulary
Exactly.
and grammar.
Yes.
So we're turning our inner monologue into an English monologue,
Yes.
even for the simplest tasks.
Even for the simplest tasks.
So like getting ready in the morning.
Exactly.
How would that look?
Well, you could say something like, first, I'm getting out of bed and putting my feet on the floor.
Okay.
Now I'm walking to the bathroom to brush my teeth.
Right.
I am putting toothpaste on my toothbrush.
Uh-huh.
And now I am brushing all of my teeth.
Okay.
After that, I will wash my face with soap and water.
Wow.
Now I need to choose what clothes to wear today. I think I will put on this blue shirt and these comfortable jeans.
It's fascinating how this method combines the mental process of thinking in English with the physical act of producing the language,
Right.
even if it's just spoken to myself.
Yeah.
How does that dual engagement help?
Well, you're creating a much more robust and memorable learning experience
Uh-huh.
by engaging both the cognitive and the articulatory systems.
Right.
The act of speaking, even when it's to yourself, reinforces the neural pathways between your thoughts and the English words and grammar needed to express them.
Yeah.
It's a form of active recall
Okay.
that goes beyond just passive understanding.
Gotcha.
And by hearing yourself speak, even in this private setting,
Right.
you become more accustomed to the sounds and the rhythm of the language,
Yeah, that makes sense.
which can really improve your pronunciation and your overall comfort level when speaking with others.
Some people might feel self-conscious about talking to themselves.
Yeah, I know.
But it's good to know that this is a recognized language learning technique.
Oh, it is. It's
Yeah.
a private practice.
Right.
No one else needs to know you're doing it.
Yeah.
Think of it as a mental rehearsal space where you can experiment without judgment.
Exactly.
Over time, as you practice this self-talk consistently.
You'll find that the process becomes more natural
Right.
and less forced.
Yeah.
Thinking in English won't feel like a conscious effort anymore.
Right.
It'll be a natural flow of thought.
What other advantages do you see in this method?
Well, I think it's a fantastic way to build fluency and confidence at the same time. By getting comfortable with formulating your thoughts and expressing them in English in this low-stakes environment,
Yeah.
you're preparing yourself for more natural and fluid communication with others.
Right.
It's like a warm-up for your English language processing system.
It's also a great way to practice pronunciation and intonation without pressure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a bridge between passive understanding and active production.
Right.
By practicing speaking, you're training your vocal cords in your ear to work together in English.
Okay.
And as you become more confident in this private practice, that confidence will translate into more ease and fluency when you do have conversations with others.
Oh.
So method number 2 is to consciously and regularly speak to yourself in English, describing your actions, thoughts, and plans
Yes.
throughout the day.
That's right.
Now let's move on to the third technique for cultivating this English brain.
Okay, so the third method focuses on the structure of your thoughts in English.
Right.
So often, especially when you're first learning a language,
Right.
you tend to think in your native language first,
Hmm.
and then you try to directly translate those thoughts into English.
Okay.
This can lead to sentences that sound really unnatural,
Right.
grammatically awkward,
Yeah.
or simply too complex for your current level of English.
So the key is to shift to thinking directly in simple English sentences.
Yes, from the very beginning.
It's so easy to overcomplicate things,
It is.
especially when you're starting out.
Yeah, learners often feel pressured to express these really complex ideas
Right.
using complicated sentence structures.
Yeah.
But when you're trying to train your brain to think in English, it's far more effective to aim for shorter, more straightforward sentences.
Okay.
This reduces the load on your brain
Right.
and lets you process and formulate thoughts more quickly and easily.
Can you give us an example
Sure.
to illustrate this point?
Imagine you have a thought that you might express in your native language with a complex sentence.
Okay.
Like, because the weather is so exceptionally pleasant today, I am feeling an unusually high degree of happiness and contentment.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
While that's grammatically correct, when you're
Wow.
trying to train your brain to think in English,
Yeah.
it's much better to break it down
Okay.
into simpler pieces.
Gotcha.
You could think, it is sunny, the weather is nice,
Uh-huh.
I am happy.
Much simpler.
Much simpler.
Yeah.
These shorter sentences are easier to process and form in English,
Right.
allowing your brain to gain momentum and confidence.
Okay. So focusing on simplicity can make thinking in English much more manageable,
Exactly.
especially that beginning.
Yes.
Why is this direct approach so beneficial?
Because it reduces the cognitive burden on your brain.
Right.
It becomes easier to access the vocabulary and grammar you need,
Uh-huh.
allowing you to think more fluently and spontaneously.
Yeah.
This method helps you build a solid foundation without getting bogged down in the complexities of advanced grammar.
So it's like we're training our brains to think in the Lego bricks of English.
Yes,
And then we can start combining those bricks later to build more elaborate structures.
that's a great analogy.
But this focus on simplicity isn't meant to be permanent, is it?
No, not at all.
Okay.
This is a starting point.
Right.
A way to make the initial hurdle of thinking in English less daunting.
Okay.
As you become more comfortable forming these simple sentences internally, you'll naturally begin to combine them,
Yeah.
link ideas together,
Yeah.
and express more nuanced thoughts directly in English.
So it's a gradual progression.
It is.
Starting with simplicity
Yeah.
and building up from there.
Exactly.
How might this method impact spoke fluency?
Well, if you're already in the habit of formulating your thoughts in concise English sentences,
Right.
when it comes time to speak, those sentences are already there,
Ready to go.
ready to go.
Yeah.
You're less likely to get tripped up trying to translate complex thoughts on the fly.
Which is a major cause of hesitation
Yes.
and lack of fluency.
Exactly.
Yeah.
By training your brain to think in these fundamental English units,
Okay.
you're priming yourself for smoother, more natural spoken English.
Makes sense.
It's about aligning your internal thought processes with the way English is actually spoken.
Okay.
When your mind is already operating in simple English sentences,
Uh-huh.
the transition to speaking those thoughts becomes much smoother
Right.
and less prone to errors or pauses.
So to recap,
Okay.
we've explored 3 methods for building an English brain.
Yeah.
Number 1,
Mm-hmm.
consciously naming things around us in English.
Yeah.
Number 2,
Mm-hmm.
regularly speaking to ourselves in English. And number 3,
Yes.
making an effort to think in simple, direct English sentences.
That's a great summary.
And each of these techniques
Yeah.
helps us shift our thinking to English.
Exactly.
And what's great is that these methods can be integrated into anyone's daily routine
Yeah.
without a huge time commitment
No.
or any specialized materials.
Just your surroundings and your mind. It's about making small changes
Right.
to your mental habits.
And these small, consistent efforts lead to big results.
They do.
Yeah,
The human brain is incredibly adaptable.
that's true.
And with practice, you can train it to operate naturally in English.
This has been so insightful.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
These strategies for building an English brain are valuable for everyone.
I think so, too.
Thank you for sharing your expertise with us.
You're welcome. It's been my pleasure.
And to our listeners,
Yes.
we encourage you to try these methods.
Yeah,
Remember, even a few minutes of practice can make a difference.
that's right.
Start small,
Mm-hmm.
be consistent, be patient and kind to yourself
Yeah,
as you build your own English brain.
that's great advice.
That's all the time we have for today,
Okay.
but we'll be back soon with more fascinating topics.
Looking forward to it.
Until next time, keep exploring English.
Yes. Keep learning
Keep practicing.
and keep thinking in English.
That's the key.
See you next time.
Goodbye for now.
If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. It really helps our channel grow and reach more English learners like you. By subscribing, you'll never miss a new episode, and by liking the video, you're letting us know you want more helpful content. Thank you for your support. It means so much to us.